I think it's because like my mantra in life and for my family too is don't give up 5 minutes before the prize,
Mm.
right? So it's staying positive. It's, knowing that most people give up after the first try. And it's really coaching people to say, you're better on a do-over. Keep going. And this is for little kids too. They get so frustrated and things are hard with COVID and thing. And yet I say, you know what, just do it again. Just do it, have a do-over. And I think that sometimes just that positive attitude of saying, you know what, oh well, I didn't get it right this first time, but I'm going to just try again.
Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast, presented by Planet of One. We're sharing stories and conversations, encouraging and empowering listeners to be bold, take action, and be your best self, so we may be the change we desire to see in this world. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Attitude of Altitude. I am off the charts happy to have Peggy Campbell Rush with us today. I'm going to say, in my way, this is an epic individual, and I'm going to read off some of the things that she has accomplished and been involved with. And I will tell you truthfully, I will not be able to cover everything that she has lived and grown and accomplished in her life, but she's been in education for 47 years, has taught primary grades, and has been an administrator in both the US and England. She sailed around the world twice with the global education system, the Semester at Sea program. She's founded St. Bernard Teachers Training Institute in 2010. She's the author of 7 books for teachers and is working on one more now. She's nationally and internationally recognized education expert who has presented her keynotes and workshop at schools and conferences around the world for over 33 years. She is an educational consultant in US and abroad, and she is a Fulbright specialist that basically works with over 150 countries across the world in education. She is a 2-time National Teachers Hall of Fame finalist, USA Today All American Teacher Team Award, and she has participated in Hands Across the Water and the Green School in Bali. And like I said, you guys, I still haven't covered even close to what Peggy has done. So, Peggy, seriously, welcome and thank you for taking the time and energy to be here.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It makes me sound very tired.
It makes you feel so accomplished with everything that you've done.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love for our viewers and listeners to really get to know you a little bit. So, would you start off by going on your background, telling us how you got into education and touch on some of the things that I touched on? And then I'll ask a whole bunch of questions with as much as we can in the time that we have.
Sure. So I always say I can't sing and I can't dance, but I really know education. And I was gifted with the fact that my grandmother was a teacher and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse in Ohio. And my mother was my teacher. She was my phys ed teacher, kindergarten through 8th grade. And I knew that I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. And I graduated from college in 1976. And there was such a glut of teachers at that point that I put out 76 resumes, believe it or not, and finally got a job. I thought I wanted to be a 3rd grade teacher, got a job teaching kindergarten, and kind of the rest is history because my very first book is called I Teach Kindergarten for all kindergarten teachers. And then the journey began. I got my master's at the University of Colorado. We moved to California. I continued teaching there, moved back to New Jersey, was teaching and also went into administration and had many travel opportunities in between that. Educationally, I was able to go, as you said, on the Hands Across the Water, which was a teacher exchange in Costa Rica. And then the teacher that I lived with came and lived with us as well. The sailing around the world on the Semester at Sea trip, which is a 4-month around the world journey where we take about 650 students around the world and they go to college on board. And we visit 15 countries with about 4 to 6 days in every port. So I was a resident director the first time that I went, and I was a senior administrator the second time that I went.
That's really neat. What do you think you've learned by doing that program that you wouldn't have learned had you stayed in the United States teaching and doing administration here?
I think once you travel, your life is changed forever. There's like no going back. I think the understanding that you get of humankind when you travel is extraordinary. And, sometimes I think that people are like, oh, there's so much war. I know there's so much peace, actually, really, because people are so nice when you
Mhm.
travel. Oh, my goodness, they're wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that, Peggy, because that's a lot of the images that we see on the news and stuff about varieties of countries. And you saying that there's a lot of peace makes a big difference in how we view each other. What is the impact for you from those programs personally, like in your life, in the way that what did you bring back to what you were doing here in the United States?
I think it was really just an openness to all cultures, all religions, all financial stratas in life, that people are amazing. And it's just, it's kind of getting to know people also. And I think also that, like, I think that a lot of people sometimes get on the defensive, or they get intimidated, that they're not going to talk to somebody who may be in a superior position, or they judge them to be different. And I find it completely different. I find that you just charge in and you get to know people, and people are very open and they really like it. And, a lot of people are just suffering. We don't even know that they're suffering. They're kind of just faking it till they make it. So I think it's a connection, just a connection to anybody and everybody.
Knowing those things and the connections, what would you say to young individuals that are launching their schooling, launching their careers? What would you recommend for them to begin doing now at a young age?
I think finding a mentor is huge. And especially for teachers nowadays, the teacher exodus is unbelievable. And all three of my own children, who are extraordinary teachers, are thinking that, can they stay in it? Can they stay in it? They have to work two jobs. They're exhausted. They'll never make enough to buy a home or something like that. And so it's really finding a mentor that you can ask the soft and hard questions to. You can get a mentor in a school that tells you where things are and how to do things, but you need a mentor to be able to ask the silly questions to, because people that are already in the field, sometimes we don't know that you don't know that. And so we forget what it's like to begin at the beginning. And so finding a mentor that you get along with is huge. And for those of us that are out there that are older like me, we should be mentors.
Who was your mentor? Did you have a mentor as you did your education system?
Well, it's interesting because I've been in education now for about 47 years. I actually retired as an administrator in 2020, and I tried retirement for about 3 weeks. I hated every minute of it, so I kind of reinvented myself. And now I am doing educational consulting and helping out at different schools, mentoring teachers, doing instructional support for teachers, coaching new administrators, and still presenting my professional development workshops. But my career has had, I've probably been through about 35 administrators in my
Okay.
career, which is kind of crazy. And I think what I learned from a lot of them is what not to do. But I tell you, I had one, surprisingly enough, a Catholic nun in Los Angeles who I have completely modeled myself after her. Not necessarily the religious aspect, but it was how she interacted with humans and valued people. I love that. It's all about relationships, really.
Thank you for saying that. That a lot of people tend to think is what skill do I need to learn, which is great. But you mentioning the personal aspect, that's what gets you moving and gets you forward in your life. So for you, now that you're doing the Fulbright specialist, what are the personal attributes that you think that you've learned through your journey that have made it so much simpler for you to be a part of a program that's in 150 countries?
I think it's because like my mantra in life and for my family too is don't give up 5 minutes before the prize,
Mm.
right? So it's staying positive. It's, knowing that most people give up after the first try. And it's really coaching people to say, you're better on a do-over. Keep going. And this is for little kids too. They get so frustrated and things are hard with COVID and yet I say, you know what, just do it again. Just do it, have a do-over. And I think that sometimes just that positive attitude of saying, you know what, oh well, I didn't get it right this first time, but I'm going to just try again.
That's really neat. I like that 5 minute rule
Don't give
of
up five
yours.
minutes before the prize.
I
And,
love
and
that
it's so
rule.
funny because my adult children will actually persevere at something and then they'll text me, they're like, Mom, you'd be so proud of me, I didn't give up 5 minutes before the prize.
You touched on something a little earlier that your kids have to work two jobs as teachers to
Yeah,
make ends meet. What would you like to see in the education system in the United States after all these years that you've been in it? What would you love to see? If I gave you a magic wand, go at it.
I would say number one is respect.
Mhm.
I think teachers should get as much respect as doctors do, and pay raise. I mean, this pay raise, the pay system for teachers is ridiculous. It's archaic. It's so out of date, and they work so hard. It is not, a 9 to 5 job. It is an emotional investment of their lives and their it's so hard now. It's so hard to, kids are changing with screen time and, parents are nervous with COVID and it's arduous to be a teacher these days, very arduous. And yet if they got the respect that they deserve, they're college educated people who often have advanced degrees. They know what they're doing. I think the issue sometimes is that people went to school through school, so they think there's an expert at school. But would you go into your doctor and tell them, yeah, no, that's don't do it that way, right? So I think it's respect, and I think the salaries have to make huge jumps so
I
that
hope someone's
teachers,
listening out there.
yeah, so teachers can go home after school and say, I can be with my family. I can make dinner. I have enough to savings that I can possibly try to buy a home. Right now, there was an article that said that school districts are actually asking parents if teachers can rent bedrooms in their home because they cannot afford to live in the districts where they teach. Yeah,
That's incredible that
it
at this
is.
stage in life that we're still seeing that.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, I can remember through the schools, the biggest impact were my teachers as I moved to the United States, the ones that care, the ones that really invested their time and energy into making us better and to understand that they struggle for them to even show up for school. That's really crucial for us as a world to begin to change that. And as I say that, is that the same across the world now that you've traveled across the world in the teaching capacity?
I think there's other countries that respect their teachers much more. The reverence in Japan, I think, is one. Finland, there's some educational systems that are extraordinary as well. Singapore is another one. And I do believe that there's an elevation of respect in those countries. And I think that we need to get teachers out of the bottom of the barrel of last to be thought of when there's budgeting.
I agree 1000%, not just 100%.
Yeah.
They're the people that impact our kids for several hours a day and launch them on their way. For how are salaries across the countries, across different worlds from
Well,
here?
yeah. So I'm not really an expert in salaries, but here in the US, it's like the Northeast, pays pretty well in California, and then kind of the rest of the states. Like I'm here in Florida, the pay is not good. Hence the reason that my kids have to, work a second job.
What kept you in education?
I
Since it
love it.
really, please elaborate on that.
I love it. So, I've always been a writer. I loved to write even when I was a child. And I thought I tried to write children's books because
Mm.
I was a teacher. I knew little kids. And I remember sending out manuscript after manuscript and getting rejection letters. And then there was a publishing company in Boston and they said, "Oh, we're very interested in your book. But we need you to tweak the ending a little bit." So I tweaked the ending and I sent it back and I got a rejection letter like 3 weeks later. I was like, "Really? Are you kidding me?" So I went to a friend of mine, Harry Devlin, and his wife, Wendy Devlin, are really, they've deceased now, but they were very famous author and illustrator, husband and wife team. And I went to him and I said, like, what am I doing wrong? Please coach me. You're this children's book author. And he goes, "You know what, Peggy, you need to write what you know." And I was like, "Well, I know kids, right?" And he goes, "No, you know education."
Mhm.
And boom, that was all it took. And then I wrote my first book, which is called I Teach Kindergarten. And I thought that was it too. I thought I poured everything out of my head into that book. And now I'm writing my eighth. So it's pretty incredible. So I guess it's just the love and the passion. Whether they say that it's not real work if you love it. It's nice to get paid for it, but I really love what I'm doing. Absolutely love it.
What personal attributes did you really have to develop for you to continue doing this work, to do the writing, to do all the teaching and the administration? Is there a personal attribute that you can go to someone, hey, if I had to pick a couple, here's things that you ought to work on?
Well, I think you need to find the joy. I mean, I used to bound out of bed every day. I couldn't wait to get to work. I couldn't wait. I was like the kids. It was like Saturday. Oh, I don't get to go to school today. So I think it's really cultivating that joy. And if you don't find the joy, like find something else. Really find something else that brings you joy. I know that times are hard and we all need a salary and all that kind of stuff. And yet, finding the joy is really it's passion, but
Mhm.
you know, I love to joke around with the kids. I think kids are hilarious.
They
and
are.
they feed me.
If you had to give advice to parents as they launch their kids off to school, what would you say to them?
I would say trust the teacher. There's always three sides to the story. you know, this side, that side, and then the truth. I would say that make a relationship with your teacher so that you are kind of a team for the child. Show respect for sure, and try not to go over their head. I think that I find that when you know a parent will come to me as an administrator and say, "Well, I'm going to complain about a teacher," and I basically say, "Well, what did he or she say when you met with them?" And then they'll say, "Well, I didn't." Well, how can we have a relationship if you're not even willing to talk to that person? And teachers are they're wonderful, and they're also really type A personalities. Where if you say something bad about them, they immediately go on the defensive because it's like it's their life. So respect teachers for sure. Make sure that you are a team, for that child. And I think that just little things you can do for a teacher, little notes, little gifts, little appreciation is always welcome.
And how would you like to see them treat their kids as
Well,
parents?
I'm going to tell you, we are not on this earth to be our child's best friend.
Mm.
We are on this earth to parent them so that they are value-centered human beings that can go out in the world and be parents themselves. Um, you know, don't ever do for a child what you know a child can do for him or herself. I don't care how long it takes. It's called productive struggle, right? They're kind of in the zone of a do-over and a do-over and a do-over. But when they get it, when they do something that they've tried so hard, it's a eureka moment and they own it. Whereas if parents are constantly doing stuff for their kids, the child is never learning that independence. And guess what? They are going to leave you at some point and they're going to go off. They're going to go off to school or a job or get married or move away. And we need to know that we've done the very best because even though, my children are in their 30s. Oh, I'll give them advice. Do they take it? No, they don't have to anymore, but I know that my husband and I did a great job all the way up until, they flew the coop.
I'm laughing as you're saying that because immediately to my mind came a story with me and my sister. When my niece was really young, she used a crayon and colored on my floor. So I was attempting to clean, and my sister walked in and gave the sponge to my niece and said, "Okay, sit there and scrub it." And it didn't come clean. She said, "Well, scrub harder." And I was like, "No." She said, "No, no, she's got to learn. She's got to understand that what she does makes a difference and that she's responsible." So when you're saying that, that image came to mind. Are there examples that you can give us?
I love that, because that's natural consequences, and kids do need to learn that their actions have an impact, even our littlest ones, and I tell parents, give a choice, give it back to their child. I'm sorry that you chose to write on the floor. Maybe you'll make a better choice next time, but here's the mop and the scrub brush. Sorry. You see how it's not like a demeaning thing. It's more like giving ownership to the child to make that decision. And now what are we going to do about it? It's hard. It's hard because it takes time. And I think also with social media right now, we have a lot of kids who are on screen time too much, which is actually changing brains. We as adults are on our screen time and our phones too much. So I think kind of having a family structure where, even for the parents, you can be on your cell phone or your computer only at this time, and the rest is going to be family time. We have to get back to that.
I think that's so true. Honestly, Peggy, I see my nieces, again, my sister and my brother-in-law are incredible at parenting, and their kids on game nights or nights that they get with their friends, they're not on their phone. They're playing games. They're doing things that
Yeah.
actually help them interact. So I could see how that makes a big difference. What would you love to see for families in the United States and across the world, actually, in our education to be better human beings?
Well, I do believe it starts with family. And so family dinners, the family game night, family walks, family tickle fests, especially reading to your children is of paramount importance. That whole, your child sitting next to you on the couch, or when they're little in a rocking chair on your lap. And, there is so many things that happen while being read to. I actually read to my children on up through upper elementary school. It was just such a wonderful, positive time. And there's such great literature out there, wonderful children's books, of course, but also YA novels, which is, youth novels. Some are spectacular to hear aloud, not on tape, but by your parent reading them to you. So I think reading is paramount, and that carves out special time. You have to turn off your phone. You can't be on the computer, and you're close to each other.
Peggy, what are some of the personal storms in life you might have weathered and came out ahead through those storms, like a personal storm that you might have gone through?
So I guess there's two real major ones. One was that when I was 42, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. So I was premenopausal. I had to go through, full mastectomy, lymph node dissection, chemotherapy, high dose chemotherapy, lost all my hair. So this is my second lifetime of hair. Probably lost about 25 pounds. And, look at me, I'm not necessarily 25 pounds overweight, but, and my kids were very, very young, and the doctors did not know whether I would live or die. And so that was a big struggle to try to explain to a not quite 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, that mom may not be here, but I am. So that's a good thing. And then another one was that I was going to a conference, And I was on a 4-lane highway with no median in the middle, and a pickup truck hit a car, and the car came out of oncoming traffic and hit me head on. And so I broke everything: my nose, my sternum, my ribs, my wrists, banged up pretty much everything. Didn't know that I was going to live or die then either. So it was just, fight back with physical therapy. And I think the thing I missed the most was I had to leave work. I couldn't work for 3 months. That drove me crazy. But you have to heal, because if anybody even knocked into me, of course, my whole body would hurt. So it's just climbing back from a couple of those things, I think. Um, and then, I think another one was that I did work up in New Jersey as a lower school head at a prestigious private school. And I got this offer to go around the world on semester at sea. And the head of school at that time forbid me to leave, forbid me to go on it. And I remember calling my dad and saying, what should I do? I really want to take this because my husband could go, and 2 of my 3 kids could go. And I had been talking about semester at sea their whole lives. So you can imagine what an opportunity it was. And my father had one word for me. He just said, "Do you want to work for a man like that?" And the answer was no. But at that point I was already 60. Like, who hires a 60-year-old, And yet I threw a wide net, and I ended up here in Florida at a super prestigious private school called the Bowles School in Jacksonville. And I was hired as an administrator there, and they waited for me to start in January. Schools start in August. For me to go on the semester at sea program and then come back and then take this administration role. And what I didn't realize when I was being interviewed was that the associate head of school who was interviewing me, I didn't realize this until after I got hired, that his son was like an apprentice or had an internship at the semester at sea office in the University of Virginia, which was where the whole program was housed. And he was going to go on the spring voyage, and I was on the fall voyage, and he never let me know. So I believe in divine intervention, because that was definitely one.
What did you learn in those journeys of cancer, of being hit by a car, of a person coming directly at you in a negative way? What did you learn? What aspects have been impacted and changed in you because of those?
I think it's resiliency. Again, it's the not giving up 5 minutes before the prize. And basically, sometimes I just think, well, you're wrong. Sorry, I'm a really good person and you don't know what you're losing. I'll go spread my gifts somewhere else, which is really what I did. I mean, I so landed on my feet. I was even at a more amazing school with wonderful people who were just dying to get to know me, and celebrating everything that I had. And so I sailed around the world and I got a wonderful job. So it's just the resiliency of not getting too down and saying, I'm great. I don't care even if you are or you aren't. And even if you're starting out. When I was starting out and I would interview, as I said, I sent out 76 resumes, and I got a couple interviews. I had this like book, with pages in it that I had letters, from my student teaching or something like that were positive, or cards or whatever. And if they didn't like me, I would just hug that to me as I walked out of the school going, "I'm sorry that you missed out on me, but
I love that so much, because I work a lot with the younger generation, and sometimes I could see their thought process of almost crumbling if something doesn't go exactly the way that they think it needs to go. And you sharing the resilience part for them to stand up and for them to be their own cheerleader of who they are and what they
Yeah.
know is so crucial. So how much of that did you instill in your own kids?
Well, first of all, I never did anything for them that they could do by themselves. So if they fell and they were crying, I'd basically wait. I just, see if they could get up on their own. I mean, I didn't rush in, and they are extremely resilient kids, and they are tremendously value centered and hardworking, and, have that same outlook in life that hey, listen, if life gives you lemons, go ahead and make the lemonade. But I think that they learn that through parental example, which it really has to come from. Kids just know. Kids know if you're stressed. Kids know if you're smiling only from the nose down, because when we really smile, our eyes crinkle, even if you have Botox. I think that there's something that kids know. And so I think our positivity is what we are able to gift to our children. Yeah.
So when you go out and do education and mentoring for teachers or at conferences, what do you cover the most?
I cover all topics and aspects of early childhood and elementary education. So across the board, whether it be struggling learners or classroom management or tricks of the trade or reading, writing, language arts, pretty much anything that you can think of, executive functioning, brain research, the brain body connection. I probably have over 50 topics that I can present on. And I think one of the reasons that I've lasted this long, because presenters don't last a whole long time in this business. You have to be good. You have to morph yourself. You have to continually stay up on the research. You have to continually kind of be in the trenches, of which I've never left. And, then you have to also be able to disseminate it. And so my workshops are filled with tremendous information and a lot of humor, which makes it a really fun day.
I look at schools and I look at education in general, and I look at how do we make better individuals so that they can go out and live their lives as productive individuals, productive citizens, productive human beings. What are some of the things that you could look at and go, here's some things that we need to work on as individuals so that we do turn out to be great human beings? Because every advancement we've had in this world has been amazing, from technology, from being comfortable. Yet as people, I still see that there's so much opportunity for us to grow as human beings. So as an educator, and because you get involved with teachers and you had the opportunity to be involved with students, what would you say to people across the board to begin learning and working on within themselves?
So I think it's an examination of finding your strengths. And I think that that's where teachers come in. Like just saying to a child, wow, you solved that math problem. I feel like you're an expert. Do you think you could help, this child over here? Right. So I think as teachers, we do a lot more peer to peer, where we recognize the gifts in children and we help them to really realize those. And once somebody believes in you, and how easily also that is diminished, right? How easily one statement from an adult, let's say the child's dancing and they love dancing and they're around, and then, one adult will go, well, her sister's a lot better than her. We have to watch what we say, because it is black and white for some kids. That's it. Somebody said something to me when I was younger, and I know I'm not good at that. And so we have to recognize that the brain doesn't even myelate until about age 25. So we're still kind of connecting the emotions with the IQ and forming ourselves and morphing our personalities too. When we get to middle school, kids are trying on all kinds of different personalities until they find a group that fits or what their strengths are. So I think it's trying to help children find their strengths and kind of knowing what your strengths are too. My husband has mad skills as far as like contracting and any kind of woodworking, electrical, all that kind of stuff. And I know that's not one of my strengths. I never will be. Right. So it's kind of giving it up and honoring in other people what they're amazing at and telling them. That's the big thing.
My mom used to be a teacher, and she speaks about how she never had one child fail. And one of her strategies was is if there's something going on, she would sit with them, or she would do what you suggested, asking another student to sit in and help them with whatever it is that they're working on so that they can get through everything and really graduate and with honors if possible.
Yeah.
So you saying that for us to pay attention to the kids and not say things.
And I think that one of the words that we should adopt is yet. Well, I'm not good at that yet. I can't do that. You can't do it yet. Right. So again, don't give up 5 minutes before the prize. We're always better on a do-over. I mean, think about it. Even you write an email and then you look at it before you send it and you think, oh, I did that too fast. And I'm going to add this, I'm going to edit that. That's not quite what I meant. We are always better on a do-over. Even reading a book a second time, you get so much more out of it, right? Because our brain just skims the surface on our first attempt. It's when we go deeper the second and the third time that we really get an impact.
Peggy, would you touch on the listening skills and the why? I've heard you speak about that before, and I think the audience would really get something about the why and how to listen. Like when a parent would walk into your office
Oh,
upset
yes.
about
Okay.
something.
Yeah. So usually what I found is that parents that would come in upset, I'm a problem solver. So initially when I first started, I would just jump right in with a solution. Here's how we'll do it. And then I became a much more thoughtful listener. So what I do now is I employ what I call the 5 whys. So if you were to come in and you were, angry or you upset about something like that, I would start to question, I would just say, listen, listen, listen. And then I'd say, tell me more about that part. Or why does that hit you so hard? Tell me more where those feelings are coming from. That was an interesting point. Let's go deeper in that, right? So I'm asking kind of not the 5 whys, but, digging deeper and deeper. And what I found in that questioning method is that what they came in with is not necessarily what the real issue was. Sometimes it's because they had a bad experience in their schooling and they're trying to make sure that their child does not have that same experience. And so they're transferring their emotions. Sometimes it's they're having issues in their own lives and this anger is misplaced. So I have found that in doing this, it softens the conversation. It gets to the depth of the matter. It shows them that I am really invested in them and that we can work together to solve things.
There's so many nuggets that you're saying. I hope the listeners are picking up this stuff. Out of all the different adventures you've been on, from the different education to is there one that stands out in your mind? And why does it stand out?
Well, I think that's pretty funny. So one of my very favorite countries that I ever visited was Sri Lanka, off the coast of India. And I like hot food. I'm actually what I say an equal opportunity eater. I don't care where I am, I'll eat everything, and I love ethnic food. So I went into this little hole in the wall restaurant that maybe sat 8 people, 10 people at the most, right? And I didn't speak the language. They didn't speak English. So I ordered something off the menu and the waiter was like, and he goes like this, like, yes, you really want it? And I was like, yeah, okay, I really want that, right? Well, the food came out and it was so hot that, have you ever seen those cartoons where the rivulets of sweat are pouring down? My shirt was drenched. And then I asked for napkins, and the napkins there are like wax paper, like thin wax paper, so they don't mop anything up. Well, the funniest part about this story was that they had just a little curtain back into the kitchen, and it was like a totem pole. There was the little kid, the bigger kid, the teenager, the mom, the dad, and the grandparents, all with their heads out this thing on top of one another to actually see if I would finish. And when I did finish, although I was sweat soaked, they applauded.
Oh. That's wonderful.
It was hilarious. So that's what I'm saying about the relationships. I didn't speak their language, they didn't speak mine, but they were so appreciative that I was appreciative of what they served me.
How did you use respect as you went to these countries where you didn't know the language or didn't understand their culture completely? Because I think that's a big piece in helping the world begin to heal better.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things about travel. First of all, I really don't get nervous until I feel like the people of that country get nervous, you know. So
Mm.
I go and I am very, very cognizant of traditions and norms and etiquette. And, you know, I try to study up before I go. I don't
Mhm.
want to make a faux pas because I am not respectful of their culture. And then I stay quiet and I watch, you know, I people watch to see what is appropriate and what should I be doing and how should I dress as well? You know, should I have a head covering on? Should I cover my shoulders as I'm going into a mosque or a church or, you know, a religious event? Because I want to make sure that I'm a foreigner in the country, and I admire the people so much. I don't think we give it enough respect to people that know like two languages or more. I mean, here we are in the US, we know English, that's it. You know, I find people remarkable. Um, you know, even my grocery checker the other day was Hispanic, and you know, I'm trying to learn Spanish. That's like my bucket list for the last 2 years. And she was so sweet to be so tolerant to me. And I'm thinking, you're the one that's so smart as I'm trying to speak to her.
I think you have skills that you don't speak about admiring individuals in who
Yeah,
they are. And
yeah,
that comes across in your education, that comes across in everything that you touch, including your trainings. So thank you for being who you are, because those are the things that are impacting our world to be a better world. Is there anything that you'd like to cover that I may not have asked you, Peggy?
well, let's see. I do love to present. So if anybody's interested in professional
Good.
development, I love to do that. I love to travel too. And, you know, I hope to just keep giving back to the profession as long as they'll have me.
And as a final look back into your life, if you were going to leave your children a message that they could hear 10, 15 years down the road, what would you say to them?
I'll start to cry. I love them so much and that I believe in them. I believe in them wholeheartedly. Sorry.
No, sorry. Thank you, Peggy, for saying that. I think the world is crying for that, for people to tell each other that they love each other, for people to actually admire each other and stand behind them in everything that they're growing through. I see that. Isn't that what you've done with education, honestly, Peggy?
Yeah, love them all. Yeah, love everybody.
And
Yeah.
taught them to be respectful
I'm
in
resilient.
the way they, and
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for the resilient part. Because again, I said, I see a lot of the younger generation that life comes at them and they haven't learned to grow through it yet. And sometimes, unfortunately, some of them may end up taking their lives. Some of them end up doing things that harm themselves and others. So I'm asking you these questions on purpose so that parents pay attention to the little things that become the big things.
Yeah. And what I will say to parents of, let's say, 3, 4, and 5 year olds is that don't send your kid into school too early. You know,
Mhm.
I know that they make the cutoff date, but if they're not, if you don't feel that they're mature enough, don't send them in. Life caves in on you pretty early, and hormones come in so much earlier than, let's say, my generation, and your brain and your body can't connect with that. So, you know, if a teacher says that maybe your child needs a gift of another year, listen. It
Mhm.
is a true gift. It truly is. I mean, if I ruled the world, I wouldn't let 5 year olds into kindergarten. I would make them all be 6, because, you know, and this is not just because of COVID. This is just because life is tough and you have to be older and more mature to be able to be resilient, right? You can't be confused and have everybody else racing ahead of you. maturationally. So I really tell parents, please listen to those teachers, especially if they're asking you to give your child a gift of another year and a grade level, and do it early, do it in pre-K, kindergarten, and talk to other parents who have done it. I have a network of parents that I put my parents in touch with who are on the fence about it. And there's no going back for these parents that have done it. The best thing they've ever done for their child. So um, I I write a lot about that, all the things that you have to go through and why your child should be older when they enter school.
I said it's going to be the last question, but I do have one more question.
Okay.
What would you include if I gave you carte blanche to go? You get to recreate the education system in the US and even across the world. What would you include in education systems?
Well, I think that, so we talked about the respect for teachers. I think bringing teachers to the table to make decisions. I think it's really important, not only in the educational curricular piece, but also for buildings. We have so many people designing buildings that are not the best designed for children. Like, bring teachers to the table and get their input. They're the ones that have to live it and be it. And they're very good at it. They know exactly what works and what doesn't. So I think as administrators, we bring more teachers to the table and have great discussions. And once you're involved in something, you're invested in it. So I try hard not to make top-down decisions that are simply my idea or passion, because it'll never work. Relationships, it's all relationships. You can't get as mad at somebody who you have a relationship with. You want to work harder for someone you have a good relationship with. You want to really be admired by someone that you have a great relationship with. So it's just people to people.
And what would you include as programs? Like currently we have science and math and this, and what would you include? What do you think is
Well,
better
I think
education?
we have a good system. I mean, we've got a reading, language arts, math, science, social studies, and I think we need to augment the arts more, whether that be the multiple intelligences, whether it's just even gardening, right? The art, the music, the phys ed, all of those things have such a big place. And that's where we see kids' gifts come out, right? Their strengths come out when we are doing across the board more of that. And so, that's being taken away in some school districts because of the time. And please don't take away recess. Oh my gosh, kids have to stand up. They have to have that brain body connection. They have to learn through their bodies and, have a release of imagination and running around. So,
Thank you for saying that. I would definitely include everything you said, and I would add personal development and relationships in there from the beginning.
yeah.
As we grow. How do we deal and work with each other? That's not taught currently in schools per se.
Right. So I tell teachers a lot that we have to explicitly teach children how to work together. Like, we can't just say I was just working with another teacher and I was saying, you can't just say, go work with a partner. You have to role play exactly what that looks like, because, we assume that kids come in with various skills, and they don't. And especially in COVID, when they haven't had social interactions for 2 years, we as teachers, and we're very good at this, I will say, is teaching explicitly what it is to get along with somebody. And those are the executive functioning skills that are so important in early childhood and then early adolescent, that unless we really do that in classrooms, we miss a big opportunity for kids to grow, because academics is not the only thing.
Peggy, you are a wealth of knowledge and an incredible epic person. Like I said at the beginning, what is the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you if they'd like to hire you, if they'd like to hear more about you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's Peggy Campbell Rush at Weebly.com, but I also have an email address, which it's a long one, so I'll spell it out. It's KDG and then a hyphen, like a dash, and then the word keep dreams grand at hotmail.com. So KDG hyphen keep dreams grand at hotmail.com.
And I'll include that in the show notes so that people
Okay,
have a
great.
way
I'd
to
love.
reach you.
My husband says, you can't shut her up when you start talking about education. So you better watch what you wish for if you get in touch with me.
What would you love to see next for you for your life?
Oh, you know what? I am absolutely not ready to retire.
Yeah, you've already attempted that.
I know. And my husband keeps saying, when are you going to be ready? And right now I'm not. I'd like to still do a lot of international travel as I can. But really right now, my goal is just to gift back, my skills to education.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, remember, guys, our attitude determines our altitude in life. And I'm going to add in resilience from Peggy. So please, if you've liked this episode, leave a comment. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peggy.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be with you all.
Thank you.